Good afternoon, everyone. I think we have 12:01 here on my clock. We can go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us. We're glad that you are here for our information session regarding this project to bring Eno River State Park to downtown Hillsborough. My name, if we haven't yet been introduced, I'm Jessica Sheffield. I'm the Executive Director of the Eno River Association. Again, it is my pleasure to welcome you here with us for the next little bit of time. Let me just quickly review a few of the standard webinar housekeeping items before we begin our education program. As you saw, as you were logging in, we are recording this program so that it can be available to folks in the future. And we have Emily Hill of the Eno River Association working in part today behind the scenes. She'll be helping to monitor your feedback and questions throughout the program. We'll ask that you use the Q&A tab for that feedback and questions. If you're more comfortable with the chat feature, we'll keep an eye on that as well, but our first look will be to that Q&A. You know Emily is the Development Director for the Eno River Association, and we thank her for putting this program together. I also want to be sure to thank our friends at the Archaeological Conservancy, specifically April, who is behind the scenes today, also ensuring that we have a smooth program. They are our webinar Zoom hosts for the day. As you're typing in your feedback and comments and questions, please be sure your username is correct so that if we can't get to you today, which we hope we'll get to everyone, but if we do want to follow up with you afterwards, that way we'll know how to reach you. Now, in just a few moments, we'll be sharing with you all the information you might want to know about this project of bringing the state park to Hillsborough. And we want to make sure that you have all the information you need about how to get involved as well. I am now pleased to introduce Hillsborough resident Holly Reed. She'll be joining us for a reading of the Eno River Association's Land Acknowledgement Statement. A supporter of the Eno River Association for more than 35 years, Holly has been a member of our board of directors for 2 decades. Her passion for education and equity and accessibility have drawn her to serve in numerous capacities on our education committee, our nominating committee, and as co-chair of our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Accessibility, and Environmental Justice Committee. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the significant role that Holly has played in the publication of the last 2 editions of the Eno River Journal, Ribbons of Color Along the Eno. Holly, I see that you've already come off mute. Could you please share with us the land acknowledgement statement?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I have the honor of reading our land acknowledgement today. The Eno River Association respectfully acknowledges that the land we are on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Eno, Shakori, Sissipaha, Occaneechee, other people of Siouan descent, and their descendants, the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation. Although they lived in separate villages and developed distinct identities, they spoke a common Tutelo-Saponi language. In this language, their descendants call them Yesa, which means the people. The Eno River Valley was their home for thousands of years before the arrival of people from other continents. Indigenous people are the original stewards of this land. The mission of the Eno River Association includes the protection of the natural, cultural, and historical resources of the Eno River Valley. That protection is mostly necessary due to colonial practices and an economic system of land use and ownership that has often degraded our environment and dispossessed many peoples of color. We make this acknowledgement as part of our education and commitment to inclusion of all in our community, and recognition and respect for the history of this land and this river and all peoples and beings on the Eno through time. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. It's always a treat to have those words spoken at the beginning of Eno River Association events. Thank you. Well, if we might flip to the next slide, I think we'd like to start with a round the room introduction so that our guests know to whom they are speaking today.
Everybody, I'm Kim Livingston. I'm the Director of Conservation and Stewardship at the Eno River Association. I been with the association since 2014 and am responsible for leading the land acquisition and stewardship efforts within our watershed.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly Radowitz, and I am the Park Superintendent for Eno River State Park and Occaneechi Mountain State Natural Area. I have been with Park since 2013. I have been at Eno for about 5 years now, and I've been the superintendent for the last 2. So I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations. Everything that happens here at state parks that you will find with our park rangers, our maintenance staff, and trying to bring you education and keeping you safe out on the trails.
Hey everyone, I'm Kelly Berliner, Eastern Regional Director for the Archaeological Conservancy. I have been with the Conservancy since 2013 now and am based out of our Frederick, Maryland office, but I cover a region that extends from Maine down through North Carolina.
Good afternoon. I'm Renee Price, Chair of the Orange County Board of Commissioners, and very pleased to be here because the Eno River is actually my backyard.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Jennifer Weaver. I am the mayor of Hillsborough, and similar to what Renee said, the Eno River is so precious to the town of Hillsborough, and we take our job as stewards seriously, and I could not be more excited about this project.
Thank you all for those remarks. We could not be more honored to have your partnership as we get underway on this land transfer. So to bring everyone up to the sort of same level of understanding about who the players are in this project, let me tell you a little bit about the Eno River Association. We are a nationally accredited land trust. Our nonprofit was founded in 1966. Our mission is to protect the natural, historical, and cultural resources of the Eno River Basin. That, of course, means we are working hard in both Durham and Orange counties. One of the early projects that we championed was the creation of the Eno River State Park. Very proud about that and helping it to grow ever since. Since then, again, we have supported the park through further land acquisitions, also through education programming, and what I would term sort of general advocacy and public awareness. Our board of directors has the important role of serving also as the Parks Advisory Committee. We are, I'd say, Kim Radowitz, I hope you'd agree, in sort of constant contact and partnership on ongoings at the park. Now, in addition to Eno River State Park, we at the association have helped to create and preserve land that has become other local parks that you may know, including Occaneechi Mountain State Natural Area, West Point on the Eno Durham City Park, Little River Regional Park, Penny's Bend Nature Preserve, and our Confluence Natural Area. We are busy continuing to acquire land and secure easements. We provide stewardship, education, special events like the annual festival for the Eno, hoping to inspire others to prioritize our local and natural resources. We have terrific gems here along the Eno, and I'm delighted to be talking about several of them today. As I mentioned, we're constantly striving to fulfill the 3 arms of our mission, and this one project will do just that, as we will be able to protect the natural, historical, and cultural resources in this one transfer. These 226 acres will continue to enrich the local community in perpetuity and care in the hands of their new stewards. Now with that, I think our next slide will be Kim Livingston telling us a little bit more about this parcel.
Hey, everybody. So the Eno River Association was brought into this project to connect the key partners and manage the sale, identify resources, and support the transition of the properties. This role is a role that the association has taken since its creation in the 60s. Most often, our goal is to transition these protected lands to government agencies and parks departments who can open them to the public, such as what Jessica mentioned, Eno River State Park. So as many of you may know, The land here shown in this map is owned by the Classical American Homes Preservation Trust, and it's been operated as a park for many years. Classical American Homes Preservation Trust started purchasing this land with great support from Preservation NC starting in 1993. And the reason for those acquisitions was actually to protect Airmount, which is across the river, when a bypass for the town was proposed that would expand Elizabeth Brady Road through this land and close to that Airmount property. So when we think about this land, most of us, we think of that it's protected. However, Classical American Homes Preservation Trust is now in a position where they feel it would be best if a more fitting organization owned and managed the property. Classical American Homes is realigning to focus their resources on their mission, which is to preserve, protect, and open to the public examples of classical American residential architecture. And as you think about this land, that doesn't quite fit. So they approached the Eno River Association to ensure that with the sale, the ecology of the area would still be preserved. The Speedway would still be accessible for low impact recreation as it is today. And those archaeological sites, which you're going to learn more about, would be protected and available for research and teaching. So this land is absolutely, truly special. And as Jessica mentioned, it hits on all three components of our mission: the natural, historical, and cultural resource protection. The land is divided into two main areas. So you'll see in this map, there's a red outlined area and an orange outlined area. The red outlined area is 206 acres, and that is what is being proposed to be part of Eno River State Park. And then there's the 20-acre parcel, which is outlined in orange, that is being proposed to go to the Archaeological Conservancy. And I'm not going to go into deep detail on these two parcels because that comes later with our next two experts, but I did want to give you just sort of an overarching attributes to this property and why we think it is so very special. There are 2.8 miles of river and tributary frontage. There's over 4 miles of walking trails, including the Riverwalk and the North Carolina Mountains to Sea Trail. There's 2 historical features listed on the National Register of Historical Places, and those include the Occaneechee Speedway as well as downtown Hillsborough. And within that 20-acre parcel are the locations of the earliest known settlements along the Eno. There are also 14 known rare plant and animal species, including the federally threatened Neuse River water dog. If you haven't seen that critter, you should definitely look it up. So I am going to turn it over now to the next 2 speakers who are going to dive deeper into those individual parcels. And next up is Kelly.
Okay, thank you, Kim. So I'm going to briefly touch on 2 things. The first one is to give a brief background on the Archaeological Conservancy, as I expect many of you have probably not heard of us, but we operate a bit behind the scenes as this country's only national nonprofit organization dedicated to the permanent preservation of archaeological sites. So we operate very similar to the Nature Conservancy or another land trust, but our focus is on this country's prehistoric sites as well as historic archaeological sites. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary in the past couple years, and in our 40 years, we've preserved over 550 sites across the country. So we're pretty proud of that. We're pretty happy that we've been around as long as we have. So we became interested in this parcel through working with some of the archaeologists based out of UNC Chapel Hill, who have been in charge of conducting many of the excavations that have taken place on the property. Again, this is the area that's in that orange outline over the past several decades. They were aware that Classical American Homes was refocusing on its mission and thought that the Archaeological Conservancy might be a good fit. And that's because when we acquire these properties, we ensure that they are maintained as open space research preserves. So archaeological research is still permitted on these properties. Now, specifically, what's really fascinating about this is that we have over 12,000 years of human activity that has been documented on this property. So as maybe you can imagine, with the river flowing around, this is why we call this the Oxbow parcel. This was a great place for people to live. This is a place for people to get resources, and it was a great place for a trading path. So it is believed that this was the location of the historic Great Trading Path, would have crossed the river here. And then later on, after around AD 1000 up through 1700s, this was a major area of Native American settlement. So there are multiple villages that have been recorded on the property here, including the historic Occaneechee town, which was written about a little bit by European settlers. And so what archaeology offers us is a way to give greater voice to the people that were living here long before European arrival in the area. And so in particular, at this time, between 1000, AD 1000, and the 1700s, European goods are starting to flow into the North Carolina Piedmont, followed by European settlement. And so Native American tribes were making very calculated decisions to either incorporate European goods into their use or to reject them, to form strategic alliances, either with one another or with European trading partners, and so on and so forth. So it's a time period where a lot is starting to happen resulting from European settlement in the area. And so really a lot more that we can learn. Importantly, another thing that we guarantee is that all of our properties are open to Native American communities. They're open to descendant communities. We just ask that folks let us know, because we do monitor these properties. And in some cases, like here, there is the Cedar Mountains Trail, excuse me if I got that wrong, but does run through the property. And so there is some public access, but in general, we protect these sites. We limit public access to descendant communities and educational tours. So they are open periodically, but our ultimate goal is to protect the site, protect those spaces, and permit research, which always has a public outreach component. So I know I tried to cover a lot in a little bit of time period there, but if anyone has any further questions, I look forward to hearing them at the end of the session.
Well, once again, good afternoon. My name is Kim, and I'm the superintendent at Eno River State Park. We're very excited to fold this into the state park family. Here at North Carolina State Parks, our mission is one of conservation, and a lot of that is cultural conservation as well. So as you can see in the pictures on this particular slide on your screen, you can see that at one point, that beautiful forested area was once actually a real track. It's kind of hard to imagine as you're walking through it that this was a place that upwards of 10,000 people would gather on Sundays to watch their favorite NASCAR racers come, and on a dirt track, which there weren't many of them back then. This was the first track that was a mile long. So there's a lot of firsts for this particular track. The first woman NASCAR driver drove here. By the name of Louise Smith. The last race that was raced here was won by Richard Petty. So these are some very big names, and there's a lot of history hidden by the forest that we're looking forward to bringing to the town of Hillsborough, to visitors from all across the state and other states, as we welcome visitors here at Eno River State Park and Occaneechi Mountain State Natural Area. This is just one more chapter of North Carolina's history that we're very excited to talk about. Along with the Speedway, we are also going to be managing the James and Johnston Nature Preserve, which we're also very excited about. It's a beautiful piece of land that is very similar to Occaneechi Mountain State Natural Area, which is perhaps 10 minutes away. So we have a beautiful Piedmont Monadnock forest. So when you go there, it's going to be like stepping into another forest environment, completely different than anything you'll find at Eno River State Park proper. It's going to look and feel very similar to what you get to experience when you go to Occaneechi Mountain State Natural Area. So we're excited to unfold this into the park. we're still in the very beginning phases of planning of what we're going to do, because our management and our involvement doesn't come until a little bit later in this particular project. So we're dreaming and coming up with ideas, and more meetings are forthcoming to discuss exactly what our improvements are going to be. Now, to address some things, I would like to make it clear that if there's any accesses that come from any of the nearby neighborhoods, we don't have any plans to get rid of any of those things. Much of what happens there is going to remain the same. But becoming a parcel in a North Carolina state park means that the rules that you find at Occaneechi Mountain, Eno River, or William B. Umstead, any of the other parks across the state, are going to be applied at the Speedway and the Parcel, the Johnston Preserve as well. So we're looking forward to doing new things. We're looking forward to working with the town of Hillsborough, Orange County, and for all the relationship that's bound to come. Let's see, I do know that there's maybe some concerns about whether or not we're going to see more visitation. Well, word is going to get out. This is a very popular place, and once it's added to the website for NC Parks, I'm sure it's going to become something that's going to be a little more popular than maybe you have seen it in the past. But I can assure you we will do our very best to manage it so that when you come into this area, it's going to be very similar to what you experience now, except with a little bit more management of invasive species, and a lot more educational programming. So once again, we're very excited to fold this into the park, to bring this into the state park family. And I look forward to seeing all of you out there and welcoming any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate all of this and you being here and being available for questions too. I'm sure those will be coming in, and Emily is monitoring those. Lots of questions that we've been receiving thus far are about the timeline and about funding for the project. So before I hand the mic to our next guests, let me just touch on that for a moment. The total cost of the project is going to be just over $2 million, as you see there on your slide. The Preservation Trust will be donating 23% of the land value as part of their commitment to this transaction. But the remaining funds will need to be found over the next year through public and private sources. So we at the Eno River Association, our partners at the North Carolina Division of Parks and Rec, will be applying for funding to support the project. That's from federal, state, and local sources. We've also, at the association, committed $100,000 as a required aspect of the applications that we are submitting. Now, the current timeline to receive notice about the decisions on our funding applications is later this year. Transaction closings and the transfer dates then would follow in 2023 if that plan, if our funding sources are granted. We are steadfast in our commitment to making sure that the transfer does happen to these two entities we've just introduced you to. However, we would be reassessing the timeline if we aren't granted those funds in 2022. So we'll keep plugging away at it. And so I just want to, again, state our commitment to it. And in so doing now, I'm pleased to hand the mic to Chairwoman Price and then Mayor Weaver to speak more about the partnership and transfer.
Thank you. So 4,000 acres of state park land in our backyard. That's what this means. This expansion of the Eno River State Park in Orange County is truly transformational for our entire community. At the onset of this project, the Eno River Association did reach out to Orange County staff regarding the ownership and management of the property. After months of discussion, they mutually decided that the Archaeological Conservancy and North Carolina State Parks should assume ownership. All of us are thankful to Classic American Homes Preservation Trust for their forethought to protect this land and provide such a tremendous resource in Orange County. This initiative means further protection of indigenous sites along the Eno, as well as the addition of Orange County acres to the Eno River State Park. We appreciate efforts by the Eno River Association to facilitate the transfer of the property and know that the Eno River Association will remain a strong partner with the county. Through this, the partnership between our Orange County Lands Legacy Program and the Eno River Association, we jointly have protected 578 acres and hope that that number will continue to grow. For area residents, a total of 4,000 acres of state park land will now be available for daily walking or jogging, for leisurely strolling with our family members and friends, and simply for enjoying nature and for our mental release. And many of you have probably seen me out there walking. Local businesses, including our nearby farm businesses, should expect an increase in tourist activity as people come from neighboring counties and other states from across the nation to explore, learn, and spend some money. Adding this parkland helps to ensure and protect the biodiversity of our natural resources, native ecosystem, as well as the water quality of the Eno for the benefit of current and future generations. We must think of our children. In recent years, Orange County is witnessing more and more residential and economic development, and we need these stretches of open space and green space and wildlife habitat to balance out this economic development and to create biocorridors for our wildlife. The expansion of the Eno River State Park comes as outdoor activities once again are recognized as essential to our individual and our community health. And in this post-pandemic environment, the continued opportunity for those quiet moments along the Eno are most welcome. So thank you. And I'll now pass it on to my colleague, Mayor Jen Weaver.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Price. That was really beautiful. I think you covered almost everything, but I'm going to chime in a little bit with what this means for the town of Hillsborough itself. And when I think about the economic ecosystem of our town, there are really two main pillars that I see. One of them people are very familiar with, which is Historic Hillsborough, is one of the oldest communities in this, one of the oldest towns in the state. We have a very rich and varied history in Hillsborough, and that's really important to us and has been for a very long time. Then the other one I think is a little bit more recent, which is our investment in public spaces over the past 10 to 15 years, which is, you think of, we have Gold Park, which is right there along Riverwalk, which attracts, it not only serves our immediate community, but attracts people from throughout Northern Orange County. And then of course, Riverwalk, which is only, we're coming up on our 6th anniversary. So it's very new, but it feels like it's been here for 20 years. And new people to town think it has been here that long. And so investing in these public spaces is a really important part of our identity. They have intrinsic value, which Renee touched on really nicely about it is good for us as humans to be out in nature, to have quiet spaces. It's a place that can bring people together in community. And these places are also accessible to all kinds of different people because they are free and open to the public. So this transition of the Occoneechee Speedway and the Oxbow / Riverbend property from the classical American homes to the state parks and to the Archaeological Conservancy is, I don't even have the right words to express how exciting it is to have these really secured with public access for years to come. And sorry, I do have a couple notes I keep looking down at here. So having the Eno River State Park at one end of Riverwalk while we already have the Occaneechee Park at the other end of Riverwalk, is just an amazing asset for our community. To imagine that people can come to Hillsborough, enjoy historic Hillsborough downtown, and then be able to walk to state parks in either direction is going to be of tremendous economic value to our community. So bringing people in, and also is really going to be great for the people who live and work here already. In Hillsborough, the town, we have this saying we have, which is take care of what we've got. And establishing this for the public good is a big part of taking care of what we've got for the people that live within our community that we want to provide these public spaces for. And to have it be the first state park within municipal boundaries is very exciting. And that's something that we are going to be crowing about a lot. And understanding there's going to be, some nervousness that was, spoken about earlier about, gosh, does this mean more people coming in to see the Occoneechee Speedway property? Probably, but we want to think about how that's a good thing for our community, and really opening up these beautiful spaces for more people to enjoy. And so we are very excited about our partnerships with the Eno River Association, with Eno River State Parks, with the Archaeological Conservancy. And we want to do our part to be good partners and help this work for our whole community.
Thank you, Mayor Weaver. Boy, I appreciate hearing about this, because as I was looking at my notes for the next part of the presentation, it's about growing the audience. It's about deepening those partnerships. So let me speak to that for just a moment, as folks may be wondering how to get involved in this timeline. As I mentioned, we're working behind the scenes now on securing our funding, but there are things that you might want to do in partnership with us in that process and during that timeline until the transfer is happening. So here are some things that I can share with you about ways to get involved. Attending this session, attending the session was the first, and letting your colleagues and partners and so on know that it's going to be available to watch at a later date should they wish to see this, and just share your enthusiasm about it. We've been offering some public opportunities for walks, guided walks on the property, but as you know, these are open to the public. And so please do reconnect with that area on your own time if you like, or you could contact our Director of Development, Emily Hill, to schedule a small group tour, such as what we've been offering for the past few weeks. The Eno River Association will be supporting more education programs and hikes on the property, and stewardship efforts as well. And so you can work with us as a volunteer on any of those upcoming events. We did have such a popular public hike out there just a week or so ago that we do anticipate a fall hike series built around the themes that we've been talking about today, to learn about the natural, historical, and cultural treasures. We, in fact, at the Eno River Association are hoping that our annual membership meeting can be held out near on that property to, again, try to engage more folks directly on that land. We're looking for hosts in local neighborhoods that are adjacent to or nearby to this property. We could provide special guests in the education program, but maybe there are ways that you and your neighbors could gather together in partnership with us, or perhaps you work with or for one of the local businesses who are adjacent to this property and can help us develop a deepened partnership and help us raise awareness both with the neighbors and the businesses. We know that we're going to be increasing that number of Eno River State Park visitors, right? As Superintendent Radowitz may have mentioned, the Eno River State Park was seeing more than 1 million visitors these past 2 years. Growth, we know, is due in part to the pandemic, and we expect greater involvement and traffic in a sustainable way on these parcels as well. So that's some of the outreach and volunteer opportunities. The next slide is going to talk to us a little bit about that funding I was talking about. So there are opportunities for you to help donate to any of the nonprofits that we are been talking about today, not just the Eno River Association, but Classical American Homes, Preservation North Carolina, and certainly the Archaeological Conservancy. As I mentioned, we've already secured a $100,000 gift from, I believe they're here with us today. Thank you to the Harkrader family, local friends and neighbors of yours, long-term supporters of the Eno River Association. Their family's astounding gift was made in the hopes of inspiring others to make new or increased donations to the association this year. The matching grant that they have offered us and the funds raised in association with it will advance our role in the project and ensure that we can continue to protect important properties in the watershed. Now, because it is the intention that this transaction will be paid for through the grants, your donation to us will help support the fees and the funding applications and the advocacy and the education that we're doing, not to mention the stewardship that we'll be doing in the future. So I think that what Emily is going to offer you in the chat is a way to help us through making your donations. And again, so pleased that the Harkrader family could join us today on this call. It's always a treat to be able to share the news with you in partnership. So again, the current timeline is to receive notice of the funding decisions later this year, with transfer dates then to follow next year. Again, I want to restate our commitment to making this happen, and we'll reassess our needs if the grant funding doesn't come through this year. But for now, nothing in what you will be visiting there or activities available to you will be changing. Once the property does change hands, signage will be erected to ensure that you know who to contact if you need anything. But for now, it is still Classical American Homes Preservation Trust property. So that's to whom you would be in touch should you have any concerns about things there. And I think somehow I just got to the end of my notes. That seemed abrupt, but here we are. We did want to make sure, and I'm glad to see the time is what it is, because we did want to allow time. We know that you've been thinking about questions as we've been together. At this time, Emily Hill is going to be joining us in person to help us ensure that your questions are answered in the time that we have remaining. Before I mute, I just want to say thank you again to everyone who's joined us today. We really appreciate your interest in this project. We couldn't be more honored to be a part of it and to share this project with the partners that you see here on the screen of panelists. So thank you all very much. And with that, Emily.
Awesome, great. We have some really great questions that have come through both in the chat and in the Q&A. I have about a dozen questions, so everybody sit tight and we'll try to get through these all. And if we don't, we will certainly reach out to you. Thank you for those who have included your email address for follow-up if necessary. The first question comes from John Dempsey. He gets the prize for being the first question asker. He wants to know, does this change in ownership and stewardship mean the end to the North Carolina Department of Transportation's plan to build a bypass connecting Business 70A via Elizabeth Brady Road across the Eno River and connecting it to Highway 70? And I will let y'all jump on that, and anybody can speak to that.
I can jump in. So this property actually has a good set of protections in place that Classical American Homes placed on the property once they owned it. And those are some conservation easements, trail easement, and a historical easement. And within those easements, there are definitely restrictions to moving forward with infrastructure such as roads. So they had that, they understood that, and I think knew how to provide that protection at acquisition.
I can respond to that as well, because myself and a whole lot of other people were part of the effort to stop the Elizabeth Brady Road extension. In fact, I think I met some of you on this call through that effort. And when all was said and done, that project is dead. I think it was on, we did so much work on it. I think it was like January 26th of 2010 that the federal Department of Highways rescinded the purpose and need of that project. So that extension, which actually would have put a 4-lane bridge next to my house, is no longer alive. and then I think with this effort, plus the effort that we went through to make the Speedway an historic landmark, that project is off the table.
Thank you.
I'll just add one
go for
final statement on it, is that, you know, this was before my time on the Hillsborough Board of Commissioners, but, you know, at the time when the Board of Commissioners voted not to pursue that project as well, like Renee said, it was done, and that option has been part of zero conversations at the town board level in my tenure over the past, I guess it's been 8 years. So that's not part of our discussions at all for transportation.
Thank you. All right, next question from Randy. Will there be access from the Johnston Preserve across Highway 70? And I think this also speaks to another question we got about the plans for making it easier for pedestrians to cross the river at 70 at the far east end of the nature preserve.
I can start off to address that a bit. So I will say that State Parks did secure a trail easement from this property that connects to the existing Eno River State Park. I think the issue that you are seeing right now is the US 70 replacement bridge and the difficulty of crossing under that bridge. That project was completed in spring of 2021. I'm sorry, there's something beeping in my background. I apologize if you hear that. So prior to the replacement, there were many comments by State Parks and Orange County and the Eno River Association to really push for trail access under that bridge, as well as a wildlife crossing. And when the bridge was completed, those elements weren't done by DOT. They are now going back to remedy that situation. And they have at least verbally agreed, and maybe it's gone further than that, maybe Kim Radowitz knows, but to put at least the Mountains to Sea Trail along underneath the Highway 70, the new Highway 70 bridge, to make that connection complete. As far as then building trails on connecting the remainder of Eno River State Park, you all may know that there is a gap between that section of Eno River State Park and sort of the main body, what I know as the main body of Eno River State Park at Coal Mill Road or Fuse Ford. There is still a land gap there that we all are actively working on completing, and hope to do so to make that one continuous, safe trail system.
And I'll add to that, actually, my neighbor who's on this call, Joni, had reminded me that there was no bridge, walkway with that bridge when it was completed. And I meet quarterly with the North Carolina Department of Transportation, and brought this to their attention. And they admitted that there had been an omission, and they are looking at how they're going to rectify that situation. We didn't meet last, we're off our schedule, but they did, as far as meeting, but they did send me a memo saying that they were still working on Commissioner Price's request for this, this walkway or greenway with the bridge. So it's, we're working on it. And I think, this team effort here, we'll get it.
Great, thank you. Speaking of access, Nancy asks, at one point I heard there was a bridge that was going to be built across the river from the Speedway to Aramont property. I think she's referring to the pedestrian bridge that's listed on some of the maps that are still on the property. Will that bridge still happen?
I'd just like to say that we're entertaining every idea. I don't know if that's going to be one that comes to fruition, but as I said earlier, all of our plans are in their infancy. So whether or not that connection happens, it still remains to be seen.
I do know that at one time there was talk of that bridge and trying to get, like Boy Scout troops and whatever to do it, but I never heard of any specific plans, and I think with this change in ownership, that might also change.
I'm going to stick with the opportunity, the theme here of connecting. Several folks commented about bicycle connectivity, the Greenway. From Elizabeth Brady, there's a no bicycles sign on the Riverwalk there by the Eno River Bend parcel. I know that our team at Eno River Association is actively working on this. So Kim, I'm going to pass to you to give the first comment here.
Sure. So I'm going to go back to what I said previously, that Classical American Homes did put quite a bit of this property under some sort of easement. And one of those was the North Carolina Mountains to Sea trail easement that crosses from across the Oxbow property and then through, across Elizabeth Brady Road and on. So the section that we're talking about, of course, is connecting Riverwalk to Elizabeth Brady Road. And when that easement was put into place, Classical American Homes did write into the easement document to exclude bicycles. I think a lot of the reason there was to protect the archaeological resources on the Oxbow track, which the trail is created in such a way that those resources are protected. The trail is not paved in that section. It's the use of Chapel Hill gravel, that sort of thing. And as Emily mentioned, I am starting to begin those conversations with state parks as well as Classical American Homes, and seeing if we can amend that easement to allow bicycles just on that short section to get everybody to Elizabeth Brady Road, because I know that that's a big town need and part of their transportation and sustainability plan. So just know that we're actively working on that, and those discussions are definitely, they're active.
Yeah, if I could add to that just a little bit concerning the archaeological sites. And as somebody who rides their bike to work every day when I'm not in the field. So again, I'm not trying to choose sides, but it's something that we'll have to keep in mind if it is open to bikes. We can't just put asphalt down as it prevents access to the sites because of the nature of these sites. They're really spread out. They're in areas where that trail is located, as well as areas outside of that trail. And so putting down asphalt usually involves grading an area, and so it would cause irreparable harm to the cultural resources. And so that's not so easy to do. As far as permitting bikes, again, that's something that we're open to negotiating, even though, again, this isn't an easement that predates our involvement. What we have to keep in mind is, light bike use generally isn't too impactful, but if you get areas where people are using bikes heavily to the point when you have a lot of muddy weather in the springtime, you start to get rutted areas, that can easily harm a site. So those are things that it's important to keep in mind when making these decisions moving forward. Again, as somebody that thinks it's a great idea to have that bicycle connectivity, it's just making sure we can do it in a way that is mindful of all the resources there.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm going to keep your mic on because we had a question about the Oxbow archaeological site, about whether it would be mowed annually to prevent reforestation. It's currently being taken over by secondary forest growth. And what is the Archaeological Conservancy's plans there?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it was something that when we visited the property last year with Kim of Eno River Association, as well as some members of the Occaneechi Band, considered that we do not like that type of growth coming up on these sites. Our general policy is when we own the property, if the site has been mowed historically, we continue to keep that mowed. If it's already in forest and has been in forest for decades, we don't cut the trees down at that point. At that time, the damage is essentially done. So it would be one of our first things to do once we own the property to take that into consideration and see if we can go ahead and get that growth cut back. And from there on out, probably mow it once a year. We kind of assess it depending on the needs. Needs it twice a year, we would do that, and we would work with somebody locally. So it's a great question, and it is at the top of my management concerns for this property.
Right, for once the transfer takes place in the next year or so.
Right. Yeah, I can't know it unless we own it. So
Yeah,
this is something that would be down the road. Yep.
Yeah, it always feels like an asterisk we have to put on these conversations. You mentioned the Occaneechee, and I wanted to see if someone would speak a little bit to the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation. This has archaeological sites that are recorded as Occaneechee. How was the tribe engaged in conversation?
I'm happy to go ahead and speak to that a little bit. It was really great once the Conservancy was brought into this project, working with Kim. We were able to set up, or we were given the opportunity to attend a tribal meeting with the Occaneechi Saponi Tribal Nation, where we explained our intentions, how the Conservancy operates, to essentially demonstrate that this property would continue to be open to the Occaneechi, that we would be willing to collaborate and so on and so forth. And there was a great time period there where questions were asked and we answered. And then we also met with representatives of the Occaneechi Band out at the site this past year, again, to go over what type of management we do, how the site would be accessible, and so on and so forth. And so I've continued to engage them in conversations about this. We've received their thumbs up. They're fine with the Conservancy going ahead with acquisition of the parcel. And then at a future date, if there's interest from the tribe in acquiring the parcel from the Conservancy, that's something that we're always open to discussing, once we get into the details of that, but don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves just yet, considering this is still a deal in flux. But so far have had really great support from them and great involvement, and we're really excited about that.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we have a few more minutes and a few more questions, so we'll try to power through some of these. Sorry. Someone's asking, Kim is asking another Kim. There's so many Kims on the call. I've been told that the Speedway was used for horse racing before it was used for car racing, and also the center was used for high school football games for a time. If these are facts, is that something that's important and interesting? What will the protection of those historical sites and the cultural sites be going forward?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I've never managed anything that has any items on the historic registry before. So I'm reaching out to people in the division to gain help and experience with that, so we can make sure that the Speedway is kept the way that it appears now. All of the history is interesting. So the fact that it went from a horse track that a NASCAR future owner was flying over, that he saw and decided that'd be a great place for an automobile track. I mean, all of that history is fascinating to us, and we're just starting to dig into it. So all of those things are definitely topics that we'll explore and bring to people who want to come and join those programs.
Thank you. We had some questions about the state park, about if you could comment on the regulations and signage that would accompany the land transfers. Also questions about, when will you actively start managing the area? Is it happening now, or is it happening in the future? And then what about staffing? Are there plans to increase state park staff to manage this area and increase the traffic that we'll see?
Well, increasing staff is very much our hope. We do recognize that the addition of this property should bring us to about 4,800 acres that we manage between Occaneechi Mountain State Natural Area and then what is Eno River State Park. So we are hoping and asking and working closely with our Eno River Association friends group, because they're our friends group. They're also my park advisory committee, to help assist me in helping make that a reality. So we're very much hoping for more positions to manage that well. Other questions I think were about state parks rules and regulations. If you've been to Eno River State Park or Occaneechi Mountain State Natural Area, you will often see that we have on brown and white boards, we have the the rules we need people to know as soon as they come in. Sometimes those are gate hours. Sometimes it's keeping your pets on a leash. But sometimes you'll also find on a white rectangular sign are our rules and regulations. And those are the ones we need people to know first off. For example, no fires in undesignated areas. I think Emily in the chat has put the website to all North Carolina parks for our rules, our park rules that extend through all the parks across the state. So if you see anything in there you have questions about, please, you can always reach me by calling the office or getting my email. I believe it's on the website as well. And we're happy to try to explain what might be coming with our assumption of management, which, to answer that question, is not going to happen until sometime in 2023, when all of the negotiations and transfers are complete. So at this time, we do not manage anything to do with the Speedway. If you happen to see state park staff there, feel free to ask us questions, but we're just there to kind of explore for ourselves and kind of observe things, but we are not there to assist in any sort of a law enforcement capacity or anything like that. We won't be mowing there. That's still, everything's still under the care and management of Classical American Homes Preservation Trust. So if you do have any issues that you find there, if you have any sort of emergency, please, as always, call 911, but you're most likely, until we take over management, you're going to be dealing with Orange County Sheriff's Office and Hillsborough Police Department at this time.
Thank you. Well, we are wrapping up. I have a few questions remaining about opportunities to engage. So someone's talking about whether we're going to expand our incredible education programs to be held at the Nature Preserve, or whether there will be work days to remove invasive species, and how soon, and how do people sign up. So Kim or Jessica, if you want to speak, are able to speak to those, that would be great.
I can talk about stewardship. So I will say that the Friends of Mountains to Sea is a very active group, and they have been actively working on the trail system here and in removing invasive species. So I would say before the transfer happens, your best bet to really get involved and get involved in the stewardship would be to reach out to that Friends of Mountains to Sea group and get on their list. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to do a work day out there. We very well could. We haven't, our spring work days are set, but our fall ones aren't. So definitely you can sign up to receive those notifications from us if you are interested in stewardship work. And I'll let Jessica take the education piece.
Yeah, I think what we're hoping is that we'll build a fall hike series around the education opportunities that exist on those parcels. So we're going to be working with our education director to design and facilitate those through the fall.
Excellent.
Thanks for the question.
Yay. All right. Well, just under the wire, we just have one last question that came in about camping and campsites.
Kim Radowitz.
Well, that's a new idea that hadn't been proposed quite yet. I can safely say that there are no plans at this time to have campsites. Here at North Carolina State Parks, we really try to keep the impact to the ecosystem at the lowest level that we can. And so we don't allow any camping that is just, you know, I think in the educational forests and national forests, you can camp basically wherever you like. But here we really keep it to our campgrounds. And at this time, the only campgrounds that exist for Eno River State Park are going to be at the Fuse Ford access and at the Coal Mill access.
Excellent answer. I feel like that's a common theme for the state park is we're still trying to figure out what we're doing there, and assessment is taking place. But certainly we appreciate all of your questions because they are also comments and they are also feedback for us to learn about how you engage with this property. We thank you so much for joining us today for this robust conversation. Panelists, for your time, giving an hour to our friends here to learn more, to hear about this great work that you all are doing. Thank you very much for being here. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your day. I'm going to put a link to more information in the chat, and in that link there is a link to my email address. You can also email the association at enoriver.org if you have remaining questions, or if you're, laying in bed at night and thinking, they didn't respond to that. Let me ask that. Just follow up with us. We're here. We're a small group, but we're happy to answer your questions. And we do work for the community, so we want our community to be involved. So thank you all so much. Have a great day, and we'll end the presentation now.